Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen here, Rav Shmuel ben Yehoshua. Yes, Rashbi in the house. And once again, thanks for tuning in. Before we start, let's acknowledge a couple of very special people in our area. I'm talking about Tess and Marlene. I call her Malka Kepner. Now, many of you know Malka, who is a 97-year young Holocaust survivor. She grew up in Poland. She was sent to Auschwitz, and she survived. And she's as feisty as ever, for those of you who have seen her when she's been to some events. And Tess, her daughter, has done a marvelous job of taking care of her and being a great daughter. She is in the process of videotaping and videographing Malka for her experiences, the same way Steven Spielberg has interviewed Holocaust survivors, like some of you remember Saul Ziza. He died recently. He was on that. He was interviewed back in the mid-90s for that project. And the idea is to get the words, have these people talk about their experiences so this doesn't get lost in history. So people who deny the Holocaust, like I've heard that the school district of Fontana is no longer teaching Holocaust. They don't believe it. And we have to make sure that doesn't happen. So kudos to Tess and Malka. May you live to be 120, 120 as it goes. So, second of all, this Friday we are going to participate in Shabbat Across America. This is a program that's sponsored by an organization, NJOP, National Jewish Outreach Program. And as such, we will be joining congregations all over Canada and the United States. And we will be doing a very special program. It's designed to be a learning service. So people go to services and they sit there and they repeat the prayers and they sing along. And probably, is it fair to say 85-90% of my fellow Jews don't understand why they're saying it, what they're doing. Yeah, we like the prayers. It means something we remember from our childhood. But why do we do it? So we've got a little bit of a program, and instead of doing a sermon, we're going to have a question and answer period. Yes, everything you always wanted to know about Judaism and Shabbat, but we're afraid to ask. So please join us. We'll be doing a dairy potluck, and we'll be doing this program. Everybody will be participating, and you might find out some things that are surprising. Let us segue from the ritual and the liturgy into the spiritual by talking about this week's portion. Terumah, and you will bring gifts. Now, the word Terumah, some of you may recognize that who have read the Torah. It's when you engage in a venture, okay, be it farming, be it managing animals like cattle herding, sheep herding, something like that. You are obligated by Torah. It's like a tax, and that's what the word, it's a tithe, it's a tenth. And that's what tithe means. It's the Latin word for tenth. So a tenth of your first fruits go to the priests and the ministers, the Kohen and the Levites. And two, what do? Pidyon Haba. We dedicate our firstborn, and we redeem them. It's kind of ritualistic from the priests by paying a little bit of money. And that helps the synagogue, that helps the temple, I'm getting ahead of myself. That helps the temple upkeep. And as such, you folks may remember last week we had Shabbat Shekalim. This is the Shabbat before the month of Adar, which we're having Monday and Tuesday, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi. And basically this honors the time when all the Israelites were mandated, let's put it that way, sanctioned to donate a half shekel of silver weight to the temple to start it. And this week we are starting to get into the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the portable mash unit, as we used to say in my class, that's being transported around the wilderness with the Israelites. So a couple of weeks ago, we had the portion of Yitro where we were introduced to the Ten Commandments, the first, the big ones, which all the commandments revolve around. And last week we had Mishpatim, which is other important commandments, like taking care of the slaves, helping the widow and the orphan and the righteous stranger that decides to dwell among us, making sure that someone who is destitute gets a second chance at life, things like that. Now that we've started to get those laws, now we're talking about the dwelling, the physical dwelling. Now, spoiler alert, we know what's going to come. We know that ultimately Moses is going to come down from Mount Sinai after receiving the Ten Commandments, and he's going to find a golden calf. The people couldn't wait, thought he was going to be down in 40 days. They miscounted. It was an extra day. Where's Moses? We need something to come between us and God, so God knows us, and we'll get there. When we get there, we'll talk about it. But in the meantime, so part of the concept is that people are like, well, wait a minute. If that happens later, and Moses has the Ten Commandments, and he's giving more commandments, and now we're talking about the Mishkan, where does the golden calf fit in? The point is that, yes, the Torah is not necessarily historically, chronologically accurate. It doesn't follow a specific time. Okay, Moses goes up, we got the golden calf. Okay, Moses gets pissed, he goes up there again, brings down another tablet. Okay, now it jumps around based on the importance of the concept of what we're studying. So it's not necessarily historical, but it is important. There is a flow to the Torah that does not necessarily follow history. So now that we've got the laws, now we've got the tabernacle, terumah. Let's look at that word a little bit. Let's look at some other words that are important. So terumah involves the word ramah. Now some of us as kids went to Camp Ramah. What does ramah mean? It means higher. It means like elevated. So terumah comes from that word, ramah, higher. You are elevating yourself, hint, hint, by giving your first fruits, by giving your tithe, by giving the half shekel, by donating to the upkeep of the physical dwelling that houses the spirituality. Now this can get a little obfuscated, in a sense that in Judaism, we do not have any idols before us. We do not have any signs or symbols to represent God. And this is a very revolutionary concept, especially 3,500 years ago when it was introduced. Societies back then, they had gods. They worshipped trees. They worshipped idols. They worshipped the stars, the sun. They worshipped the area around them. And in the Egyptians' case, it was their idea to try and control that, control nature, and you've really got power. Judaism is unique. Kabbalah, Ein Sof, okay? The prayer Yigdal, which we typically do, Yom Kippur, we do days when we're ending a service. That's not Shabbat. It's the way I grew up traditionally. Your tradition, your minchag may be a little different. So in it talks about the 13 articles of faith, from Maimonides. And one of it is that God has no body, has no spirit, has no presence. God is just there. God is Ein Sof. Everything but nothing. I mean, how do you reconcile that in a physical nervous system, in a physical brain? It's tough to do, okay? So the point is, we don't worship a thing. We worship directly to God. The Mishkan was just a place to do it, to get it organized. So everything is kind of codified. We're codifying our commandments now. We're starting to do that. Now that we've been released from bondage, from Egypt, and from the contamination, take it as you will, of their pagan society, now we're being introduced to a revolutionary society. And yes, as we go forward, you're going to see how the Israelites had a very hard time accepting that, because they've been living in a society that worships things, that's pagan and idolatrous. So the idea of terumah is that you elevate yourself by giving to this. That's part of it. So a lot of the rituals that we do, it's tough sometimes to see the spirituality. Last week we talked about a sermon, Jewish karma yoga. Okay, how, in the Eastern societies, in the Himalayas, the gurus, they gain enlightenment by following the gurus. Well, we do that by following the commandments. It's right action. When you do right action, you get right action back. The rabbis are very big about measure for measure. What you put out comes back to you. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but you set up that around your soul, your nefesh, okay? Another word we want to talk about is the way they started talking about the various artifacts. So the 10 Commandments are going to go into this ark, and there are dimensions to the ark, 2.5 cubits by 1.5 by 1.5. It's about, I think it was like 3 feet by 1.5 by 1.5, something like that. A cubit is, this. And it was overlaid. It was covered with gold, and covered with wood, and then covered with gold. So you got gold, wood, gold. And the cover was called the kaporet. Now, from the word Kippuret, which means cover, we get the word, you guessed it, koper, as in Yom Kippur. So what you're doing is you're covering yourself with holiness in order to absolve your sins. The portion also talks about, and there's a little bit of commentary in it, that Moses, the golden calf and everything. And one of the reasons we use the gold is because, see, we have the golden calf. This is what gold is supposed to be used for, to honor Hashem. It's a precious metal. And terumah too, right? And it's supposed to kind of absolve ourselves from the calf. So the other part of it, terumah, it starts out, and I want to end with this, is that God says everyone's heart, everyone who feels, who has a feeling from their heart and wants to give materials. So the materials to make the menorah, to make the table for the showbread, the 12 loaves of bread that were baked, that sat there all week, and then were eaten by the Levites. The altar, the threads, the goat hair for the curtains and the hooks and all that, and that's basically what this portion talks about. So remember, let me leave you with this. The physical is to embody the spiritual, just like, you guessed it, the body. Shabbat Shalom. Look forward to seeing you for Shabbat Across America. And if you don't come here, may you have a great Shabbat wherever you are.